The water was cold against my legs as I stood waist-deep in my own lake, staring at the woman who had just destroyed my peace. Karen stood on what used to be my private dock, waving her arms like she owned the place. Behind her, a wooden stage stretched across my waterfront property. Construction materials were scattered everywhere. Paint cans, lumber, and power tools covered the grass where I used to sit and watch the sunset. "This dock was abandoned," she shouted at me, her voice carrying across the water to the crowd of neighbors watching from my lawn. Someone needed to give it proper community use. I felt my hands shake with anger. This was not just trespassing. This was theft. This was someone taking my sanctuary and turning it into their personal kingdom. Karen had built an entire performance stage on my dock without asking, without permission, without even telling me. She had invited the whole neighborhood to watch her talent show this weekend. That was when I realized that Karen had no idea what she had just stepped into. I had been gone for 3 days. Just a simple weekend trip to visit my sister 2 hours north of our lakeside community. When I pulled into my driveway Sunday evening, something felt wrong immediately. There were cars parked along the street that I did not recognize. The sound of hammering echoed across the water. My house sits on one of the most beautiful lots in our neighborhood. The previous owner had built it specifically for the waterfront access. A private dock extends 30 feet into the lake, perfect for fishing, swimming, or just sitting quietly with morning coffee. It was the main reason I bought this place 5 years ago. But as I walked around to my backyard, I stopped dead in my tracks. My peaceful dock was gone. In its place stood an elaborate wooden stage, complete with painted backdrop panels and stage lights strung on poles. Construction debris covered my entire yard. Sawhorses, paint buckets, extension cords, and piles of lumber were scattered across the grass like a tornado had hit a hardware store. "What the hell is this?" I said out loud to no one. That was when I heard her voice. "Oh good, you are finally back." Karen emerged from behind one of the backdrop panels, wearing paint-splattered overalls and acting like she belonged there. Karen lived 3 houses down from me. We had barely spoken in the 5 years I had lived here, but I knew her reputation. She was the kind of neighbor who complained about everything and tried to control everyone. "Karen, what is all this?" I gestured at the mess covering my property. She smiled like she was doing me a favor. "I have been working all weekend to get this community stage ready. The neighborhood talent show is this Saturday. Everyone is so excited." "Community stage," I stared at her. "This is my dock, this is my property." Karen laughed and waved her hand dismissively. "This dock has been sitting here unused for months. I checked the community guidelines. Abandoned waterfront access can be claimed for community use under emergency provisions." My blood pressure spiked. "Abandoned? I use this dock every day. I was gone for 3 days." "Look," Karen said, her tone becoming sharp and defensive. "I have already sent invitations to everyone in the neighborhood. The Hendersons are doing a magic act. The Thompson kids have a dance routine. Mrs. Garcia is playing guitar. This is about bringing the community together." I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures. The stage was not just thrown together. This was elaborate construction with multiple levels, painted decorations, and professional lighting. Karen had clearly been planning this for weeks. "You cannot just build on someone else's property without permission," I said, continuing to document everything with my camera. Karen stepped closer, her voice rising. "I did my research. Waterfront easements are complicated. This dock serves no community purpose just sitting here empty. I am giving it proper use." Proper use? I could not believe what I was hearing. "This is not your property to give proper use to." I have permits, Karen said smugly. I filed the paperwork for emergency community use. Everything is completely legal. I took a video of Karen standing on my dock, claiming she had permits to use my property. Her entitled attitude was breathtaking. She genuinely believed she had the right to take over my waterfront access because I had been gone for a weekend. Delete that video right now, Karen demanded. You are harassing me while I am trying to do something positive for this neighborhood. No, I said firmly. I am documenting trespassing and destruction of property. Karen's expression turned cold. Fine. Be the selfish neighbor who ruins fun for families and children. See how that works out for you. As she walked away, I realized this was not just about a doc or a talent show. This was about power. Karen had found what she thought was a weakness and decided to exploit it. She believed she could take my property, turn the neighborhood against me, and get away with it. But Karen had made one critical mistake. She had no idea who she was dealing with. Monday morning, I called the police non-emergency line to report trespassing and property damage. The officer who took my information sounded bored. Ma'am, if she has permits, this becomes a civil matter. You will need to contact code enforcement and possibly get a lawyer. Next, I called our HOA management company. Sandra, the property manager, listened to my explanation with growing confusion. I am not showing any community use applications for your address, she said, but let me check with the county. Sometimes there are emergency provisions that bypass our normal approval process. While I waited for callbacks, I decided to talk to my immediate neighbors. Surely they would see how crazy this situation was. But when I knocked on Jim Patterson's door next door, his response shocked me. Actually, I think it is pretty great, Jim said. My kids are really excited about the talent show. Karen said you approved the whole thing. I absolutely did not approve anything. I was not even here. Jim looked uncomfortable. Well, Karen showed us some paperwork. She said there was some kind of easement issue and that you were being difficult about community access. My stomach dropped. Karen was not just trespassing. She was actively lying to neighbors and manipulating them against me. I spent the rest of Monday visiting other neighbors. The story was the same everywhere. Karen had told everyone that I was being selfish about waterfront access. She claimed I had agreed to the community stage, but then changed my mind and was trying to ruin the children's talent show. By Tuesday, Karen had escalated further. I found a flyer in my mailbox announcing a neighborhood meeting on my own property Wednesday evening. The flyer encouraged everyone to support community waterfront access and discuss solutions with difficult property owners. Wednesday evening arrived, and I watched from my kitchen window as more than 20 neighbors gathered on my lawn around Karen's illegal stage. Karen stood on my dock like a politician giving a campaign speech. I walked outside to confront this madness. Excuse me, everyone. This is my private property. I did not authorize this meeting. Karen immediately went into performance mode. See, everyone. This is exactly the kind of selfish attitude that hurts our community. We have children who just want to perform in a talent show. The issue is not the talent show, I said, my voice shaking with anger. The issue is that you built this stage on my dock without permission. That is not true, Karen said loudly. I filed all the proper paperwork. This is about unused waterfront easements and community access rights. Several neighbors started mumbling agreement with Karen. I realized she had spent days poisoning them against me with lies and manipulation. Karen, show everyone these permits you keep talking about, I challenged. Karen waved some papers in the air. I am not required to share legal documents with someone who is trying to interfere with community activities. Thursday brought a new nightmare. A local news reporter showed up at my door. Karen had contacted the media, claiming I was trying to steal community space from families and children. The reporter asked if I had any comment about the waterfront access dispute. I explained the situation as calmly as I could, but I could see in the reporter's eyes that Karen's version sounded more compelling. A mean property owner trying to shut down a children's talent show made better television than complicated property rights issues. By Friday, my phone was buzzing with hostile text messages from neighbors I barely knew. Someone had created a Facebook group called Save Our Community Stage, with pictures of sad children holding musical instruments. The comments were brutal. Some people have no community spirit. Typical rich waterfront owner hoarding access. Those poor kids just want to perform. That evening, I sat on my back steps looking at the stage that had destroyed my peace. Karen had outmaneuvered me completely. She had turned a simple trespassing issue into a community uprising. She had painted me as the villain and herself as the hero fighting for children and families. But as I researched Karen's name online that night, I made a disturbing discovery. This was not her first time. Karen had been involved in similar community access disputes in two previous neighborhoods. There were court records, police reports, and angry forum posts from other property owners who had dealt with her exact same tactics. Karen was not some well-meaning community volunteer. She was a serial property predator who had perfected the art of stealing land through manipulation and social pressure. That was when I decided to fight back. I spent the entire weekend digging into Karen's background. What I found made my blood run cold. Karen had lived in 4 different lakefront communities over the past 10 years. In each location, she had been involved in waterfront access disputes with property owners. The court records told a clear story. Karen would target waterfront properties, claim some kind of community use right, and then use social pressure and media manipulation to try to force property owners into giving up access. She had lost every single court case, but the legal fights had cost her victims thousands of dollars and months of stress. One case file from 3 years ago was almost identical to my situation. Karen had built a community dock on someone else's property while they were on vacation. She claimed emergency provisions and community easements. The property owner had eventually won in court, but only after Karen had caused thousands of dollars in damage and turned the entire neighborhood into a war zone. But the most interesting discovery was about my own dock. The previous owner had been an engineer who had installed a unique boat lift system. The dock had a manual release mechanism that could lower the entire platform into the water for maintenance and storm protection. The system was designed to activate with a simple lever hidden under the dock frame. I had never used the mechanism because I did not own a boat, but the documentation showed it was still fully functional. The engineering plans were filed with the county, which meant it was a legal and approved safety feature. Next, I researched the permits Karen claimed to have. After hours of phone calls with county offices, I confirmed what I suspected. The permits were either completely fraudulent or expired applications that had been denied months ago. The signatures from officials were forged. Karen had created fake documentation to support her land grab. I contacted 2 of Karen's previous victims through social media. Both women were eager to share their experiences. Jennifer from Karen's last neighborhood agreed to drive down and testify about Karen's pattern of behavior. She is a professional at this, Jennifer warned me. She will try to make you look crazy and unreasonable. She will use your neighbors against you. But if you stand firm and document everything, she always collapses eventually. Tuesday morning, I called a maritime property lawyer recommended by the county clerk. Attorney Sarah Mitchell listened to my story with growing interest. "This is clearly criminal trespassing and fraud," she said. "The fake permits alone are felony charges, but more importantly, you have absolute property rights here. No community easement can override private dock ownership without compensation and legal process." "What should I do about the talent show this weekend?" I asked. "We file for an immediate injunction. But more than that, we make sure code enforcement and safety inspectors are present. That stage was built without permits on a dock that was not designed for that kind of load. It is a safety hazard." We spent 2 hours preparing legal documents, injunctions for trespassing, fraud charges for the fake permits, and safety violation reports for the unpermitted construction. But Attorney Mitchell had one more suggestion that made me smile. "You said the dock has a manual release system. That is actually perfect. If Karen refuses to clear the stage for safety inspection, you have every legal right to activate the safety mechanism. Just make sure everyone else is at a safe distance first." Wednesday, I contacted the county building inspector and waterfront safety office. Both agencies were very interested in Karen's unpermitted stage construction. They agreed to conduct inspections during the scheduled talent show on Saturday. I also reached out to Jennifer and 2 other Karen victims. They all agreed to attend the talent show to provide testimony about Karen's pattern of fraudulent behavior. By Thursday, all the pieces were in place. Legal injunctions filed, safety inspectors scheduled, witnesses confirmed, and recording equipment positioned around my property. Karen had no idea what was coming. Friday morning, I met with Attorney Mitchell to finalize our strategy. The injunction was approved, giving me legal authority to remove the stage immediately. More importantly, the county had confirmed that Karen's permits were completely fraudulent, which meant she was facing felony charges. "The key is staying calm and professional," Attorney Mitchell advised. "Let Karen dig her own hole with her behavior. Document everything. Let the authorities handle the legal violations." Friday evening, I tested the dock's release mechanism for the first time. The previous owner had built an elegant system, a hidden lever under the dock frame connected to hydraulic pistons that could gently lower the entire platform into the water. The mechanism was designed to protect the dock during storms or allow access to the underwater supports for maintenance. I practiced activating the system with just the stage construction materials on the dock. The platform lowered smoothly into the water, floating the lumber and paint cans while keeping the dock structure intact. After 5 minutes, I could raise it back to normal height. The system worked perfectly. Saturday morning arrived with perfect weather. By 10 a.m., neighbors were already gathering on my lawn with folding chairs and picnic blankets. Children ran around in costumes, excited for their performances. The scene would have been heartwarming if it were not happening on my stolen property. Karen arrived at 11 a.m. like a celebrity making an entrance. She wore a bright red dress and carried a wireless microphone. She had transformed from weekend construction worker into professional event coordinator overnight. "Welcome everyone to our first annual community talent show," Karen announced from my dock. "Thanks to community cooperation, we have created this wonderful space for our children and families." I watched from my kitchen window as Karen worked the crowd like a politician. She posed for pictures with children, shook hands with parents, and gave interviews to neighbors with cell phone cameras. She was documenting her triumph over the difficult property owner who had tried to ruin community fun. At 11:30, the first county vehicle pulled into my driveway. Building Inspector Rodriguez stepped out with a clipboard and measuring tape. Then came Waterfront Safety Officer Chen with her camera and violation notice forms. I walked outside to meet them. Karen immediately spotted the officials and her confident expression faltered. "Good morning," Inspector Rodriguez called to Karen. "We are here to inspect the unpermitted construction on this waterfront property." Karen recovered quickly. "Oh, I have all the permits right here." She pulled out her folder of fake documents. Inspector Rodriguez examined the papers for about 30 seconds. "Ma'am, these permits are either expired or fraudulent. This construction is in violation of multiple safety codes and county regulations." The crowd of neighbors started murmuring. Karen's face flushed red, but she doubled down. "There must be some mistake. I filed all the proper paperwork for community use provisions." "There are no community use provisions that allow unpermitted construction on private property," Officer Chen said firmly. "This stage needs to be removed immediately for safety violations." At that moment, 3 cars pulled up. Jennifer from Karen's previous neighborhood stepped out, along with 2 other women I recognized from my research. Karen's former victims had arrived to provide testimony. Karen spotted the women and her confident performance cracked completely. "What are they doing here?" "Hello, Karen," Jennifer said calmly. "We came to tell everyone about your pattern of stealing waterfront property from honest homeowners." The mood of the crowd shifted dramatically. Parents started asking questions. Who were these women? What pattern? What was really going on here? Karen realized she was losing control of her carefully orchestrated event. "These people are lying. They are probably paid by her to disrupt our community gathering." But Jennifer had brought documentation. Court records, police reports, and news articles about Karen's previous property scams. She began sharing the evidence with curious neighbors. At 12:15, I walked to the center of my lawn and held up the official injunction. "Everyone, I need your attention. I am the owner of this property. I have a court order requiring the immediate removal of this unpermitted stage for safety violations." Karen grabbed her microphone. "Do not listen to her. She is trying to ruin this event for the children. I have legal rights to community waterfront access." "No, Karen," I said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "You have committed fraud, trespassing, and safety violations. The county has confirmed your permits are fake." The crowd was now focused entirely on the drama between Karen and me. Children stopped playing. Parents stopped chatting. Everyone was watching to see who was telling the truth. Karen was trapped and she knew it. The talent show had transformed into something completely different. Instead of children performing, we had 30 neighbors watching a real-time legal drama unfold on my waterfront property. Karen stood on my dock clutching her microphone like a weapon, while county officials documented safety violations, and 3 of her former victims shared evidence of her pattern of fraud. "Ladies and gentlemen," Karen announced through the microphone, her voice shaking with desperation, "what you are witnessing is a coordinated attack on community values. This woman," she pointed at me, "is using paid actors and corrupt officials to destroy a children's talent show." Inspector Rodriguez looked up from his clipboard. "Ma'am, I am a county building inspector. I am not corrupt, and these violations are documented fact." Jennifer stepped forward with her folder of court documents. "Karen," Should I tell everyone about the Martinez family in Clearwater, or the Johnsons in Lake Vista, or maybe the Hendricks family in Sunset Shores? With each name Jennifer mentioned, Corinne's face grew paler. These were her previous victims, and she knew the neighbors were starting to connect the dots. "I do not know what you're talking about," Corinne said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Really?" said Margaret, another former victim. "Because I have the police report from when you built an illegal gazebo on the Henderson's lakefront, and the court judgment where you had to pay $15,000 in damages." The crowd was now completely focused on this revelation. Parents looked at each other with growing concern. Several neighbors started taking out their phones to record what was happening. Corinne realized she was losing her audience, so she switched tactics. "Even if I made mistakes in other places, this is about our community now. These children have been practicing for weeks. Are you really going to disappoint them because of legal technicalities?" She gestured toward the costumed children, trying to use them as human shields against the mounting evidence of her fraud. "Corinne," I said, stepping closer to the dock, "the children can perform anywhere. They can use the community center, the school auditorium, or any legal venue. What they cannot do is perform on a structure you built illegally on someone else's property." "This dock was abandoned," Corinne shouted. "You barely use it. The community deserves access to waterfront space." "I use this dock every single day," I replied. "I have security camera footage showing me on this dock every morning for the past month. Your abandoned property claim is another lie." Officer Chen finished photographing the safety violations and approached Corinne. "Ma'am, this structure violates waterfront construction codes, load-bearing requirements, and electrical safety standards. I am issuing immediate citations for unpermitted construction." Corinne's performance was falling apart completely. "This is harassment. This is a conspiracy to deny community access to public waterfront." "Public waterfront." Inspector Rodriguez looked at his property survey. "Ma'am, this is private property with clear title and boundary markers. There is no public waterfront designation here." That was when Jennifer delivered the final blow. "Corinne, should I read the judge's statement from your last court case? The one where he called your behavior a calculated pattern of property theft disguised as community activism." The crowd went silent. Even the children stopped fidgeting. Everyone was staring at Corinne, waiting for her response. Corinne's facade cracked completely. "You people do not understand what I am trying to do here. I am trying to build community. I am trying to create spaces where families can gather and children can play. But selfish property owners like her," she pointed at me again, "hoard access and ruin it for everyone." "By committing fraud and trespassing?" I asked. "By using every legal means available," Corinne shot back. "If that means finding loopholes in easement laws or emergency use provisions, then that is what community activists have to do." The crowd was now murmuring loudly. Corinne had just admitted to using legal loopholes and manipulation to take other people's property. Her mask had completely slipped. "Community activists do not forge permits," Officer Chen said firmly. "Community activists do not build illegal structures on private property. What you have done here is criminal trespassing and fraud." Corinne realized she had said too much. Her desperate attempts to justify her behavior had only made things worse. But instead of backing down, she doubled down one final time. "Fine," she said, stepping to the center of the stage. "I am not leaving. This stage stays here. If you want to remove it, you will have to physically drag me off my community waterfront space." She crossed her arms and planted her feet firmly on the dock, daring anyone to remove her. That was exactly what I had been waiting for. Karen stood defiantly in the center of her illegal stage, arms crossed, microphone in hand, surrounded by evidence of her fraud and facing multiple county officials with violation notices. She had painted herself into a corner, but her entitled arrogance would not let her back down. "I am not moving," she declared through the microphone. "This is community space now. If you want this stage removed, you will have to arrest me." Inspector Rodriguez looked at Officer Chen, then at me. "Ma'am, we have documented all the violations. The structure needs to be removed immediately, but we cannot physically force someone off the platform while they are standing on it." Perfect. This was exactly the scenario I had prepared for. "Everyone," I called out to the crowd of neighbors, "I need you all to move back at least 20 feet from the dock. Please take the children and move to a safe distance on the lawn." Karen laughed into her microphone. "See, she is trying to intimidate us with fake safety concerns. I am perfectly safe on this professionally built stage." "The stage might be professionally built," I said calmly, "but the dock underneath it has safety features that Karen did not know about when she chose to trespass on my property." I walked to the edge of my lawn where everyone could see me clearly. This dock has a manual release system installed by the previous owner. It is designed to lower the platform into the water for maintenance and storm protection. The system is completely legal and documented with the county. Karen's confident expression flickered with the first hint of doubt. "You are bluffing. You cannot just dump me in the water." "Actually," Inspector Rodriguez said, checking his property documentation, "if the release system is a documented safety feature, and if the property owner needs to activate it for safety inspection, that would be completely legal." Officer Chen nodded, "Especially since we have already issued violations for unpermitted construction on the platform." I could see the exact moment when Corinne realized she might not be bluffing, but her pride would not let her back down. "I do not believe you. This is just another intimidation tactic." "Is everyone at a safe distance?" I called to the crowd. Parents had moved their children well back onto the lawn. County officials had positioned themselves away from the dock. Jennifer and the other former victims were filming everything with their phones. "Karen," I said, giving her one final chance, "the dock platform is going to lower into the water now. You can step off onto the shore or you can ride it down. Your choice." Karen grabbed the microphone with both hands. "I am not moving. This is my community stage and I am not going anywhere. You would not dare actually." I reached under the dock frame and found the manual release lever. The mechanism engaged with a satisfying click, and the hydraulic system began its smooth operation. Karen felt the stage move beneath her feet. What are you doing?" "Activating the safety system to prepare for inspection," I said calmly. The dock platform began to descend slowly and steadily. Karen's eyes went wide as she realized this was not a bluff. The entire stage, with all her backdrop panels and lighting equipment, was sinking into the lake. Stop it right now," Karen screamed into the microphone. "You cannot do this to me." But I could, and I was. The platform continued its graceful descent into the water. Karen looked around frantically, but she was too far from shore to jump safely, and her pride would not let her admit defeat. The crowd watched in stunned silence as Karen and her illegal stage slowly disappeared into the lake. The water reached her ankles, then her knees, then her waist. "Help me," Karen finally screamed, her performance costume soaking through. "Somebody help me." But nobody moved to help her. They were all too busy processing what they had just witnessed. The entitled neighbor who had stolen someone's property, lied to the community, and defrauded county officials was now standing waist-deep in lake water, clutching a wireless microphone and looking completely ridiculous. Inspector Rodriguez was documenting everything with his camera. "Ma'am, are you ready to exit the water so we can complete our safety inspection?" Karen sputtered and flailed, trying to maintain some dignity while standing in chest-deep water. "This is assault. This is. This is. This is justice," Jennifer called from the shore, "and it is exactly what you deserve." The crowd began to murmur agreement. Karen's manipulation had been exposed, her lies had been revealed, and her theft had been literally sunk. Karen finally waded to shore, dripping wet and humiliated, her authority completely deflated along with her illegal stage. 2 hours later, my yard was quiet again. The crowd had dispersed, the county officials had finished their documentation, and Karen had been escorted away by police to face charges for fraud, trespassing, and safety violations. Jennifer and the other former victims helped me pull the stage debris out of the water. The backdrop panels and lighting equipment were ruined, but the dock platform itself was undamaged. The release system had worked perfectly, just as the previous owner had designed it. "I cannot believe she actually tried to stay on the platform as it went down," Jennifer laughed as we stacked soggy lumber. "Her pride just would not let her admit she was wrong." By Monday morning, the legal consequences were adding up quickly. Karen faced multiple felony charges for the forged permits. The county was pursuing safety violations that carried heavy fines, and I was filing civil suits for trespassing, property damage, and restoration costs. But the most satisfying consequence was social. Once the neighbors realized how completely Karen had manipulated them, the community turned against her schemes entirely. Several families apologized to me personally for believing her lies about abandoned property and community access. "We should have asked you directly instead of just taking her word for it," Jim Patterson admitted. "When someone builds something on your property without asking, that is obviously wrong no matter how they justify it." The talent show was rescheduled for the following weekend at the community center, where it belonged. The children performed beautifully on a proper stage with legal permits and safety inspections. Several neighbors thanked me for handling the situation professionally instead of just calling police immediately. Karen tried to rally support through social media, posting long rants about property rights and community access. But Jennifer and the other former victims shared their stories publicly, revealing the full pattern of Karen's behavior across multiple neighborhoods. The community Facebook group that had attacked me was flooded with evidence of Karen's previous fraud convictions. Within 2 weeks, Karen's house went up for sale. She could not show her face in the neighborhood after the legal charges and public humiliation. The for sale sign felt like a victory flag marking the end of her reign of manipulation. I spent the following weekend restoring my dock to its original peaceful state. I installed clear property boundary markers and security cameras to prevent future encroachment. But mostly, I just sat on my dock with morning coffee, enjoying the quiet water and the satisfaction of justice served. The legal cases took months to resolve, but the outcomes were everything I had hoped for. Karen pleaded guilty to fraud charges and was ordered to pay full restitution for cleanup and legal costs. She also received 2 years probation with restrictions on waterfront property access. More importantly, the county used Karen's case to strengthen regulations about fraudulent permit applications and community use claims. Future property owners would be better protected against her tactics. 6 months later, I still start every morning on my dock with coffee and peaceful water. But now I also start with satisfaction. I had faced down a calculated property predator who used community goodwill as a weapon. I had stood up to manipulation and fraud, and I had done it all through proper legal channels without stooping to her level. Sometimes justice takes time, but when it finally arrives, it can be absolutely perfect. Karen had built a stage on my dock without knowing it could collapse on command. But more than that, she had built her entire scheme on lies and manipulation without knowing that truth always wins in the end. My dock was mine again, my community was stronger, and Karen was someone else's problem now. Justice served.